Today, I'm going to take you going from a pattern like this to a pattern like this.
Oh, yeah!
Let's go ahead and get started on how to stitch these pages together so you can use them on your projector. Okay, for this first pattern, I went ahead and pulled up the Ash Pants by Mood Fabrics. And you can see it first pulls in, it's just got the pattern all in one column. And it probably pulled in towards the left hand of the screen. I just moved it over here so you guys can see it a little bit better. I've got it open in Pattern Projector, which is a free program that we're using today to go ahead and stitch this multi-page pattern into one whole. It is no trim pages, so I will not need to worry about the horizontal and vertical movements. I will go over those later. If you have a pattern that has the layout page, you're going to use that to kind of help you to put it together. The first thing I'm going to look at is which page numbers maybe. I noticed the first page I will need to leave out because the pattern actually begins on page 2. But I'm going to keep this up because I want to know how many columns are going to be in my final pattern. So I just count across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I will need 7 columns. I'll go ahead and put 7 columns in there. But we can see it's the first row looks like it's all lined up. And then it kind of messes up for the second row here. It looks like it's kind of off. And that's because we don't want to include this first page here. So I'm going to take off that. We're going to actually start on page 2. If I look on the layout, I also notice there's going to be a blank page down here towards the bottom. And so I can go ahead and figure out where that's going to be. You can just start with 2 to 34. If you pull this up in like Adobe Acrobat Reader, you can find out which page as well. This one has the pages marked, and I can see where it gets off is right here on this page 28. So I actually want to go to, now my page 27 is, if I did 27, you can see it actually is not correct. And I want to do 28. So let's go here like this. So it is a visual editor. You can say, oh, okay, that's not right. It did my blank here and it moved this piece here. I actually need to include page 28 there and then 29. And you can check it on Adobe Acrobat Reader if you want. But you can see it is a visual stitcher. It stitches it together visually. I see there's that blank space, and now my bottom row is lining up correctly. So zeros are going to be your placeholders. Anytime there is a blank page or no page that's printed, you want to put a 0 in. And so you'll need to put the page numbers that are before it, the space, and then the rest of the pages. If there was another row that didn't have the same number of pages or you need to skip, you would put a 0 in there as a placeholder again. So I always start with the columns, then I start with the page numbers that have the patterns on it, and then I make sure I get those zeros in. Since this was a no trim page, I didn't have to worry about the horizontal and vertical movements, but those will adjust the horizontal movement or the margins horizontally and vertically. So let's go ahead and let's look at another example. Okay, this next pattern that I just want to use as an example is the Tulip Tee by Patterns for Pirates. And they actually have a projector file for this, so you could use that, but this is just going to be for demonstration.
Did you know this channel depends upon viewers like you? If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Another way that you can support me is by checking out my shop at projectorsewing.com/shop. Or if you're interested in all my recommendations for sewing with a projector that you can find on Amazon, check out my Amazon store link in the description below. Again, thank you so much for your support. I do really appreciate it. Now, let's get back to that tutorial.
Now, I noticed that the pattern actually begins after the tutorial. So we can get you could always check on a PDF reader like Adobe Acrobat Reader which page it starts on before you go down. But I can see it actually starts on, this is page 17, you can see it here. It starts on page 18, okay? Now, this didn't show me a layout, but it's labeled A, B, C, D, and so that tells me how many columns it has, and it goes to D was the highest it went, okay? So since it only goes to D, A, B, C, D, we're going to assume it has 4 columns on it. We're going to see if those are columns or if those are rows. Okay, so now I've got my columns in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like it's going A and then B. So it actually has all the A's, so 8 columns. And that's okay. See, it's a visual editor, so we can look there. Okay, it's actually 8 columns. So I'm going to type in 8 columns. Now, it's still looking a little bit weird. We have the 8 columns, but you can tell that this was meant to be overlapped when you tape it together. Let's get rid of these layers here so you can see it. You can see between A1 and A2, there's this section that should be overlapped. That's going to be our horizontal movement. With a horizontal movement, you could type in a number, or you can just push plus. Okay, and I'm going to keep moving it over. You can see how it is shifting it until it overlaps. And it's looking really good now. And I just did it using that plus sign. Plus sign will move it close together, and the minus sign moves it farther apart. So I just stop when it's all lined up. And that looks great. Everything's lined up. But now we have the vertical. So that's our up and down, okay? So we need to overlap this bottom row here. We're going to use the vertical. I'm going to go ahead and push the plus until it is lined up. Now this works really well when all the margins are uniform in your pattern. If you don't have uniform margins, you might have to do each pattern piece separately, project it, and cut it that way. But hopefully the patterns that you have uniform margins. They're all the same left and right. So let's take a look, make sure we didn't have to add a 0 anywhere on this pattern. I do notice that the grain lines are going in different directions, which is very common for those letter sized or those A0 sized files. So I just need to keep that in mind in rotating the image when I am cutting it out. And it looks like I'm finished. There's no need for zeros or for changing those pages. It's all stitched together. I could project this. I can also turn the layers on and off that I need or don't need. Since it is a layered pattern, even though it was a letter-sized pattern, it had layers in it. I always prefer a pattern that has layers as opposed to no layers. So if you have an option of a letter-sized file that is layered and an A0 file that is not layered, go with the layered file always.